Homelessness is a big issue, and we know it is an issue, and we know that certain problems are caused by certain problems.
We often, in society, get labelled quite a lot of negative labels, quite a lot of negative language is put onto people who are experiencing multiple disadvantage or multiple needs.
And the only way to get these problems sorted is by bringing people together and try and get it sorted.
So the Voices project is part of the Fulfilling Lives programme. It's one of 12 areas across the country, and its aim is to help people experiencing multiple needs, which is combinations of homelessness, mental ill health, addiction and offending behaviour, who tend to become stuck outside of services, often street homeless, unable to access the services they need.
What we identified was missing was the gaps between the services.
Services, organisations, local authority only look at a single issue at a time, but very often people's lives have multiple issues, multiple needs, multiple disadvantage, and services are usually commissioned or services only deliver on them single issues. But as we all know, as human beings, we all have different needs at different times.
It's so important for support workers and service coordinators to be on top of the law, and it gives other people confidence to actually argue correctly and get a result that their customer deserves.
The council were evicting people from emergency accommodation without following due process, so there was a very useful court case which said that actually the local authority should be giving people warning letters. They shouldn't be evicting people for minor breaches of the rules.
There was a lot of reference to systems change, making it better, making it more accessible for people experiencing multiple needs. And all of that has stood with us in Stoke-on-Trent.
The Fulfilling Lives programme and Voices is a response to that, looking for solutions as to how services in the voluntary and statutory sector can help people get out of that situation and on the road to recovery. It was a group of expert citizens who came up with the name of the project, Voices, which stands for Voices of Independence, Change and Empowerment in Stoke. Ever since the beginning, the expert citizens and lived experience has been a central part of the project.
We were all brought together as a bunch of volunteers to help the partnership bid from the National Lottery Fulfilling Lives programme, which came Voices. Over time, at the very beginning, there was about 20 or 30 different volunteers, all with lived experience of various issues and various problems in their life. But we started to develop as people, but also started to develop different ways of working and different products which could help Voices on their mission and really champion lived experience, not just locally in Stoke, but Voices and expert citizens have been really recognised on a national footing as well.
The aims of the project were to take people with lived experience, some of the most disengaged people across the city, and work with them as colleagues and develop and support them to become leaders in the field of multiple needs.
We also did some training with the Voices team, just basically give them more knowledge, more confidence so they could deal with housing issues on behalf of their customers.
My training for Voices has always been about using the voices of people from Stoke-on-Trent, North Staffordshire. I think what you get from having lived experience on training is that people see the real story and the real person. We don't just tell their stories, we say where services went wrong, what they could do better, how you can use your motivational skills, you can inspire people to change their behaviour.
And recognising actually lived experience as an expertise, and how can we equally value that as academic, learnt or practice experience as well.
because of their way of working with individuals, not actually providing the support but getting other services linked in, they used to quite often refer, and we'd work with some quite complex cases who've got quite significant physical health needs as well as the pressing social and housing needs. So we did work quite closely together in managing some complex cases. Voices were really instrumental in producing research and badgering the council, I think, and the CCG and everywhere to get services back in place. They did one about people being able to register with a GP when they've got no fixed abode. That was a big positive push.
Housing First was set up through Voices identifying a gap. The idea with Housing First is that it's a route straight from homelessness into permanent accommodation with all of the support that you need to make that work.
So two of the things we've put into place that have been available to service coordinators include a Care Act Toolkit. The Care Act Toolkit helps practitioners at the front line to articulate the person's needs in the context of the Care Act in order to help colleagues in adult social care to form a better view of whether the person is entitled to an assessment or not, and then if they get the assessment, whether they're entitled to help through social.
The toolkit, massive impact, what that created for social services to work with, and then for us to actually to use it to get a customer through the door. The amount of times we used that was brilliant.
I was one of the first people to trial the Care Act Toolkit, so when that started it was a bit alien at the time and we didn't know how it was going to get received, we didn't know what the outcomes were going to be. But anyway, I trialled it and I was able to get a client who was always seen as a problem in the city. An assessment, the Care Act Toolkit helped social care to see that he's got a brain injury, and in turn he's now in residential care and he's still there and he's getting 24-hour care.
So a key part of the service coordinator's role is coming up with a multi-agency plan for that individual that involves all the professionals that are going to be needed on the road to recovery.
And the multi-agency response group, or the MARG as it's more lovingly known, actually gave us that ability with Voices, with the research evidence base that they were able to provide, to really be more flexible in our approach and make sure that if there were barriers we were able to take that away.
A couple of years ago we did a theatrical production with the local arts organisation called Be Arts and Ride Out.
As part of the research and development for the project, we wanted to talk to people with lived experience of sleeping rough, and also we were given access to a huge array of anonymised case studies. So we had a lot of material with which to draw on. But what was really important to us was that once we'd started to flesh out sort of our ideas for the show, that we then kind of ran those past people with lived experience and got their kind of views and their input on what we were doing.
We kind of showed that trauma-informed response that you need to look behind what somebody presents as and to notice that nobody wakes up in the morning or starts off in life thinking, I'm going to be an alcoholic, I'm going to develop a mental health problem. Something's gone on to lead them down that path, and you need to help to understand that person, to understand their trauma and help them resolve that.
For us to understand through services such as Voices the issues that people might be facing gives us that opportunity to work in a more trauma-informed way, to understand the issues that are underlying where people might present to us. When we work with them, by having that understanding of their needs, their vulnerabilities and how we can work with them better, that ultimately provides a better service for that person and make sure that we deal with people in the most appropriate way.
The people that guided them around the building to see the different scenes were the people with lived experience. We were really keen to make sure that they were involved in the performance in some way.
It makes you appreciate more the story that has happened to make this person arrive at a point where they are experiencing multiple disadvantage.
To actually see acted out the stories of people from childhood through relationships and events and happenings that actually brought them to that point. You could see the reasons why, and actually if you understood those reasons why, then the people who were in those services may have acted differently to bring the best out of that situation for those people.
I think there's a whole learning legacy from Voices, whether it's about the service coordination model, which has been adopted by other services in the city as their services have developed over time, whether it's about the use of personal budgets, which has been again included in other services as the project has gone along. Lived experience and the value of lived experience is developing as a huge legacy of the project, locally and nationally.
There was no stigma, there was no labels, it was just we're all here for do training and people were learning from each other. That shared learning aspect has been vital for myself and I think for the city.
A big thing in support working is having that confidence in yourself to advocate appropriately for your customer.
Rather than each service doing their own little pocket and focusing only on their thing, for me everything seems much more joined up now. By us talking better as a city, it has a much more profound impact on the customer.
One of the beauties of the citywide learning programme, for example, all of the events from the start of the programme even to current opportunities have been distributed in a way that people from different services at all different levels can access those opportunities at the same time.
I think it's been about the learning programme itself, which creates an environment where frontline practitioners learn in the same classroom as people with lived experience of the issues that we're trying to support with.
I've seen walls break down. You know, I've seen literally where there's been times where you've had sort of like difficult situations and you think, how on earth can this be achieved for somebody? Through the idea of Voices and communicating with each other as a group, coming up with ideas, then walls have just been disappeared, you know, and you feel that you can go through it then. And then that's it, you go into the next level.
Interprofessional working and developing relationships, learning about each other as separate agencies and services, I think has been quite invaluable.
For me, the thing that struck me really about Voices is the fact that it's people with lived experience engaging with professionals who are supposed to provide support and help, and helping those professionals understand where there may be problems with the services that they provide, or where there is policy that actually is preventing people from being able to engage.
It's changing that narrative around people and people aren't making a choice to live on the street. We've shone a massive spotlight on that and it's just humanised people, I think.
We didn't give up. If something went wrong the first time, we didn't give up. We'd try again and we'd try again, and we'd negotiate with services. I think before Voices, it was never really argued the answer no. If someone refused refused services, no was just okay, it's no. We don't take that answer. We say, okay, well, what needs to happen for you to allow this person access to this service because they need it? So what needs to happen in order for them to get the service? And then you think of creative ways, and then the service is like, okay, well, we've done this before, we can do this again.
The way that we've all changed and how we work with people, because we've got small caseloads, we can really see the bigger picture with people. So we can really tap in and identify what would give them a fulfilled life.
There's no excuse now for professionals saying that we didn't know, and that's down to Voices in part.
I think working with the expert citizens has been my favourite thing about working at Voices. I've met some great people, you know, that have had some quite traumatic life experiences, and to watch them come in and start to participate, build the confidence levels, and then to be going out there and giving talks and presentations and getting up in front of hundreds of people, you know, TV appearances, there's been a number of those, interviews for newspapers and radio. So it's just kind of, yeah, that means a lot to see people having the confidence to go out there and to share their, you know, their real world lived experience to help other people. I think that's kind of what it's all been about, really.
It's gave me purpose, it's gave me confidence, it's motivated me, it's helped me to realise that the 10 years lived experience that I've had didn't go to waste. So it's allowed me to put that in a drawer, essentially, and not see it as something to be embarrassed and ashamed about. And the encouragement I get from frontline practitioners and the Voices team has been really great to have, and it's helped me to develop as a person.
If there was a challenge that was difficult, it was somehow there was a way around it, and it was always good, and that's what you like to do. So coming into work, it was just positive, because you knew there was always going to be a light at the end of a tunnel for someone, you know, because there was something that you could do and get out of it.
One of the most satisfying things for me is to watch the development of skills, knowledge, experience, and being able to really identify the core skills that people have, and then support and motivate and encourage them to use those skills to the best that they possibly can.
My depth of knowledge has increased 100-fold, not only for homelessness but also within mental health. All the intricacies of the system I didn't really understand before.
It's been really amazing working with Voices. They're, I think, the most refreshing organisation I've ever come across.
I've learned to manage a team who are extremely bright and clever and come up with loads of ideas, and just manage people in an effective way. And they're doing a really, really hard job and giving the team just the chance to grow, learn it themselves, and just be there for them when you needed, really.
The realisation that my lived experience was a commodity, and that it was worth something, that I wasn't just what I had gone through, that actually my lived experience, being able to use it in a solution-focused way, was actually doing some good, and then gaining through the learning programme and through just working alongside some of the staff members, gaining that confidence to realise my potential and become who I am today.
Voices has helped me to create lots of opportunities for myself, which has then given me the tools to create opportunities for others. I now sit on a national charity foundation, Lankelly Chase Foundation. I'm also a special advisor for the National Lottery Community Fund Board of Directors. I'm really proud of that as a person. I was probably written off by the system many years ago. I probably would have ended up in prison, to be truly honest with you, if it wasn't for being involved with Expert Citizens and Voices. No one out there was going to give me a job. People now recognise me as somebody who has lived expertise, and really as a professional person now with lived experience, and not just a lived experience person.
So there were certain barriers to people being excluded from having suitable accommodation that actually, by doing the work with Voices and the multi-agency response group, we were able to remove some of those barriers that allowed people with complex needs to have more suitable accommodation, therefore go on to fulfil better lives.
And I'd been on the street years. Someone picked me up at probation and ended up here where I am now. And since I've been with Sam, and I've been clean 3 years now. And she was dead placid, didn't make you feel awkward. I'm a person, you're a person, I'll treat you the way I treat everyone. I just have to say thank you. I don't think I'd be here, to be honest.
I first encountered Voices when I was living with Brighter Futures in supported accommodation. They helped me all the way through applying for the provisional, all the way through to with my driving lessons, and supporting me to carry on with it. I never would have been able to do it without the help of Voices.
Couldn't do anything. Doctor's appointments were a nightmare, hospital appointments were a nightmare, obviously because of the drinking. And obviously Lauren, bless her soul, she was an absolute star. And she did get me through to eventually into the rehab, into my own flat. But I did just help my mate out, because he's now considering going to rehab. And he's an alcoholic, so he's listening to me more. But then I wouldn't have got that experience if it wasn't for Voices and that though.
I come across a guy, he was rough sleeping from the point of rough sleeping. Through the fact of Voices, accommodation came about. So this guy gone from 20 years or so sleeping rough was living in his accommodation. So he had his partner with him that she developed as well in that environment, which was great for her. So the risks from any ill health was disappearing. And he just sort of like became just a person who sort of like was happy, you know, to the point where he started to do the things that probably all take for granted. It was nice to see how his life developed from where he came from, through struggles, to actually to have a little bit of stability. I'm still proud of him. He really was. It was good to work with that guy.
For our staff team, working with Voices has meant having access to a wonderful portfolio of training and learning experiences, combined with the approach of Voices as a unifying factor across the sort of partners. That's been really valuable.
I've been working in services for over 20 years, and I'd never actually heard that perspective before of what it actually feels like to have all these labels as somebody using services. Darren's speech was really powerful. I've never forgotten it.
I think we're going to leave quite a bit of a legacy behind in terms of attitudes and stigma towards people, and I think what it's done, it's given people who are currently living those experiences a massive pathway through. In terms of accessing services, in terms of themselves becoming volunteers and putting a pathway in front of them to develop themselves and get into employment.
They've done such excellent work trying to change the system, offering learning and publications, research that people really need to be aware of.
So I'd like to say thank you very much for everybody to participating, because without you being willing to listen and willing to learn, the Citywide Learning Programme would not have been a success, and we wouldn't have been able to shift the culture the way that we have.